Chapter 4, Gifted. The next 2.5 weeks at James Island Middle were exhausting. Teresa had always been an introvert, so to have to answer so many questions from classmates about what her summer at Flax Industries might be like really wore her out. Will you learn all of Dr. Flax's secrets? What are you going to invent? Will you be his best friend? Will you be rich? Can you take photos? Will you be in the 8th grade next year, or will you go straight to college? Will you skip college and go straight to working at Flax Industries? And the weirdest question of all, are you gifted? Teresa had never thought of herself as gifted or even all that smart. She simply loved goofing around with motors and welding scrap metal and bringing the mechanical creatures in her imagination to life. She never thought of building robots as work or even science, just played. In fact, she had begun to wonder if maybe she played with robots too much. She had been friends with Kayla, Tamika, and Darby since kindergarten, and they had always liked to play together until this year. All three of the other girls had made the James Island Middle School soccer team last January. Kayla played center back while Tamika and Darby were alternating goalies. They practiced together after school. They played games twice a week, including Saturdays, and three of them talked about soccer all the time. They talked about who outskilled whom and which schools they could beat and whether they might go to the Charleston County Middle School soccer championship next year. Boring! Soccer was a game where they tried to kick a ball to one end of the field while the other team tried to kick it to the other end. That was it. There was nothing else to it. How could they possibly talk about such an absurd game all day, every day? But her three friends since kindergarten could and did. What Teresa liked to do after school was to weld pieces of aluminum scrap together at her Uncle Robert's auto repair shop. She would buy toy robot kits that included servo motors, pre-manufactured parts, and instructions that told you how to create the robot on the cover of the box. But she always wanted her robots to be bigger and better, so she would replace the legs and arms of the robots with her own welded creations. She carried these robots in progress in her backpack and tinkered with them at lunch. Kayla, Tamika, and Darby still sat next to her in the cafeteria, and the four of them still sang along to Disney's musicals that they played on their phones. They still drew on one another's book covers and pulled their spare change for donuts from the vending machine. But no matter what, their conversation would inevitably turn to soccer, and when it did, Teresa would grow quiet, tinkering on her robot with her head down. That was all fine. She might have felt left out sometimes, but they were still her friends. But once kids found out that she had won the Charleston County Middle School Science Fair and that she was going to be an inventor at Flax Industry, something changed. Suddenly, she was different. She was the smart one. She was the oddball. She was gifted. And the word felt nothing like a compliment. When she got a B on her final exam in social studies, she wasn't surprised, but Tamika was. You got a B? I thought you were gifted. Teresa didn't think Tamika was trying to be mean. She was just shocked. It was a relief when the year ended. She didn't know what awaited her at Flax Industries, but it would be a welcome change from being the oddball of James Island Middle. She was excited to get to know John and Ashley. They seemed to like to make things the same way she did. For 2.5 weeks, she had been having imaginary conversations with them, and so she already liked them, even if Ashley seemed a little bit arrogant. But what if they didn't like her? This very prospect kept her up the night before the first day of her internship. She was as anxious as she was excited. She could hear her father downstairs in his bedroom talking to himself. He was anxious too. Because it was so late and her mind was running in circles so fast, she wondered if she was dreaming when she heard a light, persistent tapping on her bedroom window. She ignored it the first 3 times. Then came the tap, tap, tap a fourth time. It was real. She tiptoed to the window, but immediately jumped back. There was a boy outside standing on the top rung of a ladder. He kept tapping the glass with his finger. She stood to the side of the window so she could get a closer look without letting the boy see her. Teresa! First place winner, Teresa Brown! I need your help. I must get into Flax Industries. You're my only hope. Please? It was a hot and humid June night, and yet the boy was wearing a puffy black winter coat with his hood on and a scarf covering most of his face. His eyes shone a brilliant and unnatural blue. Really wrapped up the way he was, his eyes were the only part of his body she could see. When she approached the window to get a better look, he plastered himself against the glass, nearly losing his balance. My name is Thomas Edison, and I beg you to listen. Dr. Flax doesn't realize it, but one of his inventions is an enormous threat to this planet, and I must destroy it. I know that once you're inside, you'll be able to smuggle me in without his knowing. Teresa stood there staring at his blue eyes, almost hypnotized by them. She thought she must be dreaming until the crack under her bed door lit up, letting her know her father had turned on the hall light. Teresa, are you okay? Why are you still awake? He was calling to her from the bottom of the stairs. I'm fine, Dad. She knew how he was. If he sensed anything resembling a threat to her safety, he wouldn't let her go to Flax Industries in the morning. The boy tapped the glass again, furiously without stopping. But this time Teresa turned to face the window and put her nose up to his. You should know it's very dangerous to be knocking on a stranger's window in the middle of the night, Thomas Edison. The boy in the winter clothes shook his head desperately. We aren't strangers. I introduced myself. I already know you're quite famous first-place spider builder, Teresa Brown. Teresa didn't feel comforted or famous by his explanation. If you want to get into the laboratory, you don't go ask Dr. Flax yourself. Why don't you go ask Dr. Flax yourself? If you think one of his inventions needs to be destroyed, why don't you tell him? The boy paused as if calculating how much he could say, because even if I thought he believed me, my sister would be in grave danger if I said anything of the sort. Your sister? Teresa gasped. I can't say any more, he said nervously through the glass. And you can't tell anyone I was here either. That would be just as bad. Well, she said, you aren't making a very convincing argument. Teresa, what are you doing? Her father said, knocking on her bedroom door. Teresa waved desperately at Thomas to leave. You have to get out of here. Now. Go. Please, Teresa, he said one last time before descending the ladder. When the opportunity comes, please let me into the laboratory. The safety of the planet depends on it. Teresa, her father asked one more time, who are you talking to? Myself, she answered. I'm counting the stars. I'm too anxious to sleep. Her father sighed. Me too.